Welcome to BizLounge, where we'll give you a peek into the minds and souls of some of the greatest Indian business leaders. India has always been open to various cultures, and at the turn of the century, a new kind of culture sprang up with BPOs that offered appealing jobs and career prospects for the Indian youth. It's Genpact that's credited with bringing this booming industry to India. Today, we'll chat with the tiger ruling that concrete jungle, Tiger Tyagarajan, and find out what keeps him going. Thanks, Tiger, for joining us.
Thanks, Vishali. Thank you.
Before we get into his roaring success, let's take a look at Genpact as an organization, past, present, and future.
It's 10 in the morning and Tiger is on the prowl at Genpact's Gurgaon offices. He tackles one topic after another and is constantly on the move.
I normally break about a phone a year because I'll be talking on the phone and I'll be walking here and the whole phone will yank down. I keep telling these guys, get me a very cordless. I can't sit and talk. I can't sit and do anything.
Tiger doesn't just get around his office, he gets around the world. His home is now in New York, but he spends over half his time meeting clients around the globe. Still, Gurgaon is special. It's where Genpact was born in 1997 as a dedicated back office for American giants GE. The young Tiger was there from the very beginning. He and his colleagues watched the organization grow from a humble subsidiary to an industry leader.
While we always had to sell within GE to bring in business, when we became independent, it was a lot of learning for us. We went through a huge amount of transition in terms of learning to deal with customers outside of GE. We have a lot of GE DNA in us. Our people practices, our approach to Six Sigma is based on what we learned with GE, and that's part of our DNA and our heritage.
Tiger took over as CEO in 2011. From zero, Genpact today has $1.6 billion in revenue and 55,000 employees worldwide. And with the industry just 15 years old, Genpact believes it's just getting started.
There is huge opportunity there. This industry is very underpenetrated. The canvas is just, I would say, about 5 to 10% filling up, and there's so much empty space there.
Genpact plans to grab that growth potential using its biggest strengths, a sharp focus on customers, unmatched flexibility, and a tiger to lead the way.
Okay, so Tiger, tell us what changes you've made since you became CEO.
We made a few changes. One, completely verticalized the organization. So we now run as industry verticals, financial services, banking, capital markets, consumer products, manufacturing, and so on. We have no headquarters now. I'm a believer that in the 21st century, if you're a globally connected, forward-looking technology kind of company, and virtual, then the concept of headquarters actually is pretty meaningless. And the last one I would pick is, I think we need to keep looking for capabilities that we can't build ourselves, and it's better and cheaper and often faster to buy. So acquisitions is a big part of our strategy. I mean, the one that was most fascinating for us was about 6 months back, the acquisition of a company called Empower Research that did social media analytics. We love what they do. They build insights out of conversations that people have. So it's fascinating.
And do you find that a lot of people still associate this sector as a sector that simply provides call center services?
Unfortunately, yes. 15% of what we do is call center work. It's fascinating. It's only 15%. 85% of what we do is all other kinds of things. The perception that this industry is about low value added call center type work alone. I think what that perception does to a lot of people coming out of college is they may not consider this industry as a great industry for employment. And that's tragic. Where else can you deal with the entire world and learn? Where else can you learn all kinds of industries without moving companies? Where else can you learn some of the best sciences around process and technology and analytics and data and so on? And it's very global. And you don't need to leave India to be global. That's the other fascinating thing.
Quarterly results have been a little disappointing for some companies in the sector. Do you think there's a worry in terms of existing budgets, new business, hiring employees? What's your outlook?
So I would say the world is different. And I think it's important for everyone to accept it and actually thrive in it. There's no doubt that we are in a volatile, uncertain world which is not going to change.
Yeah.
So I think to expect the world to, go back to its original pre-recession times is I think actually foolish. What that also means is flexibility becomes very important. I mean, there are times when a client is going to say, I don't need this anymore. As a provider, I think it's important to build immense amount of flexibility, because if you are flexible and you can, change fast, then I think you can grab a lot of opportunities. What's been the reason why you were successful till today, and not just successful, wildly successful, may be the exact reason why you will not be successful tomorrow.
And just looking more broadly, India is doing well as a sector, but is slowly starting to lose market share to countries like the Philippines, South Africa, China. Do you think India is losing its edge, and what's your outlook for the future?
So I'll answer the question in two ways. As the CEO of a company that provides global services, we look for where is the best place to provide this service today and tomorrow. What's the new country, geography, location for different services that are coming up. So we love the fact that there are new geographies popping up that are becoming important, because it provides a competitive advantage if you can get there. So that's my answer as Genpact. Obviously, the question also has to be answered in the context of India and the government and the citizen. And it is true that there are countries around the world that are beginning to offer these services. I think some of the simpler work, clearly, there's an opportunity to move it to countries that are even further behind from an evolutionary emerging market trajectory. But when it comes to complex calls, when it comes to talking to businesses, there's actually no better place than India to do that kind of work.
Great. And with that, we'll take a quick break. But before we go, we hear how Tiger got his standout name.
In my second grade, there's a poem by William Blake, Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright. So we walk out of this class after studying that poem, and a bunch of my friends, all little kids, turn back to me and say, we're going to call you Tiger because we can't pronounce your name. And you have bright eyes. So I looked at them and said, fine. I mean, whoever thought that name would stick for the next 40 years? It helps to have a name like this in India, where most names can't be remembered. So you have Jack Welch visit here, spends 3 days, meets probably 1,000 people from the company. And then he goes back, writes a book, and only remembers my name because it's the only name he remembered. It's also a great conversation starter. So with clients, you get introduced for the first time. You almost don't have to wait for the question. You might as well give the answer.
Welcome back to the show. We have Genpact's Tiger with us, but before we get into conversation, let's take a look at how this wildcat shaped his career, right from his days at IIT Bombay and IIM Ahmedabad.
Tiger Tyagarajan studied to become an engineer, but he always wanted to be around people, not machines.
I just couldn't imagine myself sitting in a room and doing research. I had no desire to work in a factory. So sales was always something that excited me.
And while most of Tiger's friends went off to the US at IIT, he made the tough decision to stay back.
So I was very clear that if I go to the US, very little likelihood that I'll come back. I didn't want to not come back. I think I'm richer for what I did than from an experience perspective, not from a money perspective.
For richer or for poorer, Tiger decided to get an MBA at IIM Ahmedabad. After graduating, he landed a job as a sales intern at Pond's and began his adventures in the corporate world.
That time, Pond's was launching a new soap. Pond's Dream Flower Soap. What a disaster. but the launch was great.
Tiger may be a product of a prestigious IIM, but he expects his employees to earn their stripes.
We tend to prefer hiring people from campuses where people coming out don't have an automatic chip on their shoulder. So we don't go to IIM Ahmedabad and hire people. Now we hire a lot of IIM Ahmedabad people, but after they've gone around lost their chip.
As a leader, Tiger admits he doesn't have all the answers, and so he surrounds himself with a diverse team of people who love what they do.
His energy and passion for his work, which just is very contagious. It rubs on everybody.
He is not directive. He's very approachable. He's very accessible. I don't think he's fussed about levels. I don't think he's fussed about where someone is in the hierarchy when he's dealing with them.
What would you be doing if you weren't running Genpact?
Teaching. I've always wanted to teach at a university, at a college. Don't know what, but it could be many things. I also think it keeps your mind really sharp. Agility of mind determines everything else, including your health. I think if you're in a class with 20-year-olds debating a topic, you will end up believing that you are a 20-year-old yourself. If you have an open mind and you have a learning mind.
And we know that you read a couple of Jack Welch's books, fell in love with the company, had a chance to go work for them. Tell us what you learned from Jack Welch while you were there and how you try to emulate him as a leader.
Many things. So he drove messages really well for a company that was so global, for a company that was so widespread, for a company that is so large. When I joined the company in '94, it was 300,000 people already. The importance of culture, I think, is the other big thing that I learned. And I think Jack spent a lot of time in culture building. And then in the aspect of that culture, how do you drive one culture when you have a company that makes aircraft engines and then also makes and sells healthcare equipment, and then once in a while makes a movie, right? So or runs a TV show. I think those are parts of the way Jack drove the company that I think are just fascinating and worth emulating, but very tough to emulate.
Okay, and how has having a name like Tiger helped you in the corporate world?
300,000 people running a little business, which is part of a business, which is part of a business, which is part of GE. If you have a name like Tiger, you get remembered more easily. So there's no question that brand recognition as an individual, I think, becomes easier when you have a name that's recognized. Particularly if what you've done is still not seen enough and it's still not been recognized enough.
Okay. You've also talked about the importance of gender diversity in the workplace. Tell us, talk a little bit about the challenges around that and what Genpact is doing to bridge the gap.
So the challenges are plenty, and here's the thing that I think we all must understand. Gender diversity is a problem across the world. I thought, before I got full exposure over the last 15 years, that actually the US or the Western European economies, gender diversity is not that much of a problem. That things are different. The reality is actually things are the same. These days, even in India, the proportion of women entering colleges and universities is much higher than it used to be. That you can actually think about having 1/3 or half your workforce as women as they come in. The question is, how long will they last? How do you create an environment where they are able to continue to build careers while still being able to live their life as a woman? So I think as a company, what we've done is really understood that in as deep a manner as we can. We talk a lot to women who go through these career events or life events. We then understand how do you create programs that allows them to talk to people about the events that are coming up, and therefore changes in their jobs, changes in their location, changes in their flexibility of how they work. And we try and fit in as much as possible.
We know that cloud computing is the new buzzword, and there's lots of small companies and startups that have gotten into that. Are you seeing demand from larger companies for this? And if so, how are you addressing it?
So there is a high degree of interest across the world in all corporations of all sizes around what can I do with the cloud. Large companies taking their technology applications and moving it to the cloud, not easy. Because the first step in that process is I want to pay my bills for my suppliers the same way. I want to run this process the same way in my company. And that's not happening. And they do the same thing differently everywhere. And they refuse, literally refuse to move to a common process. And if you don't move to a common process, you can't leverage the cloud. But I'll tell you, the biggest change that we are seeing is in emerging markets. Because these companies don't have legacy, they don't have a history, they don't have, and they're growing at 40%. So when you grow at 40%, legacy becomes unimportant, because 3 years later, your legacy is actually small. So you can actually put all your new stuff on a new cloud platform, allow your old stuff to become smaller and smaller, and then over time you can give it up. So emerging market companies in India and China are jumping to the cloud much faster, which is fascinating, because maybe some of these companies will become so effective and efficient and speedy that they will threaten companies in their industry that are more global and have a bigger history, because they're stuck in that history.
Okay, and we'll head to a break, but before we go, here's a look at why Tiger doesn't engage in what's otherwise known as a typical corporate game.
I hate golf. I absolutely hate it. I can't watch it, I can't play it. I think it's too slow. I think it's too antisocial. I can't believe it's a spectator sport. Actually, it's not. 3,000 spectators don't make spectators. So, it's also a very elitist game. So I can give you 1,000 reasons why I hate it. My entire team plays it.
You're watching BizLounge, and with me in the studio is Tiger, who always finds time for family and fun, and maybe that's the secret to his success. Let's take a look at how this Tiger prowls when he's not preying on business competition.
Went to a Catholic school. Bombay and Bandra at that time was already completely cosmopolitan. So there were a bunch of obviously Catholics and Christians in class. There were Jews in class. So it was fascinating growing up, when one never thought of it. Now, later on in life, in retrospect, you think about it and say it was so natural. I mean, I had great friends from across the spectrum. Those friends that I made in those 5 years at IIT are probably the friends that have lasted the longest. We did a whole host of things together that I wouldn't tell you. I don't think they can be written about. So. I love watching movies. The more inane the movie, the better. So therefore, Hindi movies are great, because most of them are inane. I like Houseful too. At least 2 hours in the gym, plus I love steam and sauna. Remember, if I travel the amount I told you, it's really important to be watchful, particularly if you love all food, which I love. I love all food. If you love desserts, which I love. And then it is probably 2 hours at late breakfast with my newspapers, and I do take a snooze in the afternoon. I love it. I myself am a big believer in constantly learning. I think the tragedy of life is that it's so short. I'm really curious about everything. So I want to know why people behave the way they do. I want to know its interconnection to evolution. I want to know, how the mind works. I want to know solar system and the Milky Way and astronomy. I don't want to know astrology. I'm a complete non-believer in anything that's irrational.
Okay, tell us about some of the most fun you had when you were at IIT, some of your most memorable moments.
And I'm a big fan of cricket. I think fan is an understatement. I'm pretty maniacal about cricket. So probably when we bunked class for a whole week as a group of 5 or 6 of us, and went off to see a test match. And this is when you're 17, 18, 19, and it's not that you're doing well academically, you're really focused, and yet you decide you want to pack your bags and go away and watch a cricket match. So the sense of adventure that comes with it is, I don't think is replicable. And those memories basically last a whole lifetime.
You just mentioned that you love cricket. Are there any other sports that you enjoy?
Soccer. very big fan of soccer. So the World Cup soccer is something that I probably would not miss more than 20 or 30% of the matches. Soccer is a big equal to cricket. I've told my board that I'll miss a board meeting if the most important cricket match is being played by India at any given point in time. So we set our board meetings based on cricket calendars.
You never even attempted to learn golf, even though it's such a corporate sport?
No, I did. One real attempt and many small attempts. The real attempt was joining the DLF Golf Club, I think early 2000, paying, in those days, probably 15,000 rupees for 20 classes, attending 2 out of the first 5 or 6, trying to catch up, and finally the golf teacher saying, look, I can't teach you because you just can't do this, and then fighting with him for a refund, and then saying, I'm never ever going to do this.
Okay.
So, yeah, tried.
I know you told us that you love eating. Would you prefer eating Mumbai street food, or would you opt for a fine dining restaurant?
Mumbai street food. Yeah. Pav bhaji, vada pav at Dadar railway station. No, any day. Bhel puri. So, no question. I grew up in Mumbai. Street food was, and it's clean street food. And that's one of the good things about Mumbai, which I don't think you still find in Delhi. The street food, the quality of street food in Mumbai, when I say quality, I'm talking about the hygiene of street food in Mumbai, is actually many notches better than many other cities in the country. But street food any day.
And you certainly travel a lot for work. When you travel for pleasure, what kind of destinations do you choose?
Prefer the mountains to anything else. Yeah, temperatures of 10 degrees and below, better. Temperatures of 22, 23 and above, absolutely terrible.
So how did you manage to grow up in Mumbai?
Didn't like the heat and didn't like the humidity, but didn't have an option.
Okay, Tiger, well, we're out of time, but it was great chatting with you, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Vishali. Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
And that's it for today. We'll see you next time on BizLounge.